About 2 years ago or so, I went and had some blood work, and everything was high, everything was low, nothing was good. Of course, I went to the doctor many times, and they would just tell me that, get used to it. It's a part of aging, or your menopause. Here's a prescription for this, a prescription for that. And I thought, by the time I'm 60, I'm going to feel like I'm going to need a wheelchair. And as I grew older, I was told I had hypoglycemia. I suffered from extremely dry eyes, lots of goo and what I would think and most people would think were allergies. And then I also had really bad skin allergies, meaning, I would break out on my head, and I guess psoriasis. I don't know that anyone ever told me if it was eczema or psoriasis, but I always had hives, or there was just always something wrong with my skin. So eventually, you would go to the doctor and they would just give you pills, right, for every condition. And pretty soon I was just like, why am I getting all of these prescriptions, but nobody can tell me why I have, scabs on my head and behind my neck, and nobody could tell me why. All they wanted to do was give me fiber, which now that I look back, for my intestinal problems, I'm like, so Citracel is really just sugar and psyllium, which made me feel worse. As I got older, at 54 years old, I retired as a flight attendant, and I was able to work from home. And so it gave me an opportunity to really focus on myself again, because, I had the time to think about proper sleep and exercise, etc. And I knew I needed to lose weight. I would like to probably say I started this journey because I wanted to lose weight. And at that time, at 54, I was struggling with, severe joint pain. I couldn't even grab anything, right? I had terrible hot flashes. I was always bloated and constipated. And then I started having chronic fatigue, and not the kind of fatigue where it's like, oh, I think I'll take a nap. It was just, I just never had energy. So of course I went to the doctor many times, and they would just tell me that, get used to it. It's a part of aging, or your menopause, it's menopausal. And of course, here's a prescription for this, a prescription for that. And so as I was continuing along, I'm like, oh, these prescriptions just make me tired, angry, and and I just was not feeling better. Fast forward about 2 years ago or so, I went and had some blood work, and everything was high, everything was low, nothing was good. There was nothing in my blood work that looked like I was a healthy, thriving woman. And so I was like, oh my God, I have to lose some weight. To me, in my brain, because what we've been taught is if you just lose some weight, you'll be fine. Everything will be fine. So of course I've tried Weight Watchers. I did a smoothie diet. I think 2 years before I found this way of eating, I was following a 1,200 calorie diet. I logged everything. I was eating tiny pieces of chicken and little bits of broccoli and some gross, weird salads, and, with fake dressing and fake yogurt and all of the things. And then I think I lost maybe 10 pounds. Right. And I was like, okay, but I couldn't lose any more. And I thought, all right, well, I'm going to start lifting weights, because if I lift weights, at least if I'm going to weigh this amount, I can at least look like I have some muscle, right? I'll be hefty, muscly. And I gained 12 pounds in 3 months from lifting weights. And I literally was in tears. I'm like, any weight bodybuilder wants to know how Natalie gained 12 pounds of muscle in 3 months. Well, we all know that wasn't muscle, right? So I was just at my wit's end. And so after this blood work that I had, and giving up on lifting weights, I just gave up. I felt like I gave up on all of it. I didn't know what more to do except for to live this way. And I thought, by the time I'm 60, I'm going to feel like I'm going to need a wheelchair, because I just wasn't I don't know, I wasn't thriving. So I had just been like sort of praying and desperate and whatnot, right? I started listening to podcasts, which it was new to me. I hadn't done this. And so I used to really like Mike Rose the way I heard it. And so I turned that one on and I thought, oh, well, at least I'll get some education and listen to a podcast. And I was flicking through and I saw this episode. It was called Where's the Beef? And it was the name of Vinnie Tortorich. He's the founder of NSNG. And he started talking about diet and how we as a society eat and really what we should be eating. And everything that he said made total sense. He talked about ketosis, and I was always deathly afraid of ketosis because I associated it with ketoacidosis, which puts diabetics in the hospital. I just thought that that was, being in ketosis was the sure, fast way to go into the ER. But everything that he said, it was just so logical and it made sense. And so I stewed on it and I started looking into him more and I started listening to more podcasts and, anything that I could find. So I started listening to his podcast, which led to Luminaries talking about what they recommend for diet, which was very much the same as Vinnie Tortorich, the no sugar, no grains. So after that, I decided, look, you've been asking for guidance. Why are you not? Let's do this. I had tried everything else. I mean, cuckoo things, right? The cayenne pepper fast. And just the dumbest things ever. So I immediately just decided I'm going to start this journey. So with that means I had to eliminate sugar, grains, and processed food. Seems super easy. But more importantly, I had to learn how to know what that means. What does that mean? What do our ingredients labels? What does that mean? So I started reading labels and learning what grains really are. Because I'm like, no, popcorn, that's totally, healthy. That's a healthy diet. Well, it's not, I learned. And that was my go-to snack because I didn't feel guilty. And so I had to mourn some of my favorite comfort foods. And that I think I still, mourn them once in a while. But I finally decided, I got rid of this and I got rid of that. I think I was a little bit lazy the way I started. I thought if I could just get rid of most of it, I would be okay. But really what I found out is it's time to get serious. And once I finally got serious, for 30 days, I got rid of all of it and I fully committed. And once I finally got through that 30 days, I was stable. And I knew I was like, I am on the right track because I would say 4 days, it was the first time that I could eat a meal and not complain about how bloated I was. Like, oh my God, I'm so bloated. But yet in 20 minutes, I'm hungry again, right? Even though you feel like crap, you're still eating. And I wasn't gassy. I wasn't hungry. And my joint pain within a week I would say it was gone. I couldn't believe it. I could move everything and my sleep was deeper. It was just like I had such clean energy running through my body. And I knew that I was on the right path. And in 2 years, 54 years, terrible gastrointestinal issues are gone. I have never been bloated. I'm not gassy anymore. I have 0 dry eyes. I can't believe it because since I was a kid, I've always had eye floaters and, just my eyes would always itch and they were dry. And I have never once had a boo-boo or a scab on my head or on my elbows. Everything is just, it's cleared up. It's amazing. And the biggest bonus is that I've lost well over 35 pounds. I went back the next year and I had my blood work done. And within the next year, everything that was over the, the high level and in the low levels, everything, I'm literally in the healthy range for all of my blood work. Now, of course, my cholesterol's higher than they like. And they wanted to put me on statins, put me on statins, and I politely declined. At that point, I don't think I knew much about statins, but I knew I was like, I don't need a medication. My body feels amazing. I don't think I need medicine for anything. And then, of course, the more I've learned, that it's okay for your cholesterol to be, higher than what they're recommending, because that's what our brains and our body is running on. It's energy. And that's where I'm choosing to lay my foundation, because the way I feel, if I didn't feel good, I would give it some clout, but it means nothing to me in that way. So when the doctor said, well, you look great, everything looks great, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm eating animal protein and animal fat. And he's like, are you doing keto? And I'm like, if that's what you want to call it. And he said, well, that's a fad. And you can't sustain your body on this. And then he walked out of the room. And I was kind of sad about that, because it's like, you saw my blood work. You see what's going on. My A1Cs are like amazing compared to what I was overweight, and my A1Cs, meaning my insulin, was very high. I was destined for diabetes if I wasn't already there, at that point. So I just have never really gone back to discuss my diet with them. I can't see myself really going to the doctor unless I would like some routine blood work done, or, of course, I have any kind of trauma, is where I would lay my faith in the medical profession at this point. One of the things that I learned through my 2 years that I was not expecting at all was the fact that, let's see, how do I explain this? I always thought that my DNA was to be an overthinker, to be super anxiety, like just to have high energy anxiety. And I had zero idea about diet and mental health. And that is something that I have learned listening to others talk about how they have reversed a lot of their, symptoms and their mental health struggles. And I realized that's happening to me too. It's like all these overwhelming thoughts that would eventually lead to, anxiety, which would lead to sadness, which would lead to depression. And logically, I knew that these thoughts were silly and they didn't mean anything, but they were very loud and they were aggressive and they were winners. And I would just have to let those feelings and those emotions run their course. And gosh, it was so exhausting. And so once I started this way of eating, my logic started to be louder than the aggressive emotions. And so you can still have these emotions. I still have these emotions. It's just that they don't overwhelm me. They don't sit on a hamster wheel and create depression. It's almost like a car where I have taken unleaded fuel in my body and I've added premium fuel. And now everything, my mind, my heart, and my body, it's all working as one. And it's running like a very, very well-oiled engine. And the doctors were wrong. The professionals, they were wrong. This had everything to do with what I was eating. And it makes me sad that they are not taught these things. And they don't, I think that more and more people are becoming more aware, I hope. It's still a very small community, I think. But boy, am I wake up every morning and I have so much gratitude for this community, for teaching me what I've learned. I have so much gratitude for my physical movement and my mental health. It's just given me a whole new way of life. And I really, really feel like diet isn't everything. It's not going to cure everything. But if later on down the road, if something comes along, I've given my body the armor that it needs to fight anything that comes along. And that's all we can do to help ourselves. I think that, we don't have to age miserably. We can age with grace, and we can have the same energy that we had and enjoy life the same way that we did in our 30s. On a daily basis, I start my day with electrolytes. I use Vinnie Tortorich's Ultra Salts. I trust his products because I trust him. So I start my day with electrolytes. I have, maybe 2 cups of coffee. In my coffee, I put MCT oil, is coconut oil, in my coffee. And every single day, I do a 2-mile walk with my 3 dogs. I either go to yoga or Pilates 5 to 7 days a week. Sometimes I hike, sometimes, I do some other things, but yoga and Pilates are my 2 go-to for exercise. I love the community of it all. And then recently, in the past 2 months, I started lifting weights again. And guess what? I haven't gained 12 pounds. So I'm putting on muscle. I see muscle where I didn't think muscle could happen again, at this age. They tell you can't gain muscle, after a certain age. And I'm seeing some biceps. I got some triceps happening. And so really, that's just what I do. I lift weights now. I go to Pilates or yoga 5 to 7 days a week. And every single day I do at least a 2-mile walk. Sometimes it's 3 miles, sometimes it's longer. And I just love being outside. I try to make sure I get some of that vitamin D in my eyes and on my skin. And it's just really what I strive to do. It's a little harder in the winter. It's colder, so I tend to go a little later in the afternoon for my walks. And I just love to move. Anything that involves moving. And what I eat is, sometimes I'm hungry in the morning. So I'll have a couple of eggs, maybe 3 eggs, scrambled eggs, in beef fat or butter. And then if I'm hungry that morning and I have eggs, I'll try not to really eat until later when I have my dinner, and I'll have a steak, either a full steak at dinner, or I'll have a half a steak in maybe lunch, and then the rest of the other half of the steak for dinner. I don't really have I eat it this time and I eat it that time. I sort of just gauge when I'm hungry or when I think I need to eat. I don't fast on purpose, but I oftentimes will. I have dinner by 6 p.m. or before 6 p.m. And then I don't typically eat until about 11, sometimes 1 the next day. Especially if I'm busy, it's super easy to just kind of go about your day and be like, oh, I think I'm hungry now. And then other times I wake up and I'm like, oh, I think I could use some eggs today, before. So I just kind of go with what my body wants. But my diet consists of beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. Sometimes I'll have a little almond butter with coconut oil, and that's really all. My husband, actually, I would say in the last 8 months, of course, he started eating what I ate because it was, but he's a sugar addict like we all are. And he slowly stopped having snacks and, and candy and whatnot. And then the next thing you know, I think it was this year, about 8 months ago, he has only been eating what I eat. And his snacking he's stopped, and he's gotten committed to this way of life because he's like, oh my gosh, I overate at Christmas. He goes, I gained 10 pounds just by eating, mashed potatoes and stuffing and, what we have here for our holidays. And I still ate a steak, and I wasn't going to go off track just because it was the holidays. I did have some pie with my grandkids, and I thought it was like a really good homemade type pie. It was so disgusting. And when I read the ingredients label, there were literally 30 ingredients in this homemade pie. And it felt like somebody had dumped sugar cane in my mouth. So I was like, you know what? I'm not missing anything. And my husband, I think after Thanksgiving, was like, yeah, I don't think I'm missing anything. And so he's lost probably 50 pounds. And he looks amazing. His energy is amazing. And so, yeah, I have a lot of support with him. I wish that I could get my other family members on board, because I see a lot of things that this diet could help them with. But, you can only tell people for so long until they're willing to help themselves. And, that's a decision they're going to have to make. I think my first year in, I was anybody who would listen. I'm like, you have to try this. You're never going to believe how good you're going to feel. It was like I was a crackhead running around trying to tell everybody, no, you don't understand. I would get on a soapbox and I would tell them everything that I'd learned and what I knew. And I can help you. Come on, let's do this. And they'd be like, shut up. Like, I do not want to hear this. And I have learned, and I'm still learning. I'm not perfect at this, because I do want to shout it from the rooftops. I do want everyone to feel as good as I feel. And I just wish that they would give it an opportunity, but it's none of my business what people eat. You can only show them by being an example. And if they're interested, they'll ask. Well, I would say my biggest takeaway is that I deserve this. You deserve this. Everyone deserves this. And I wish that you would start now. Even if you're young, start now. Start the foundation now. Because eventually you are going to, have some of these things that come up in your life, the autoimmune diseases, the joint pain. Just know that there's a way to not have those, symptoms, and those, you don't have to, like I said, you don't have to age miserably. You don't have to be perfect in this diet, this way of eating, I should say. My biggest takeaway is I did not know that I could spend every day and not be hungry. I've never been hungry one time. I've never white knuckled. I've never, had to speed my car up to get home because I needed to shove some food in my face because I was so shaky. I didn't know that this was possible. So I wish that everyone knew that you don't have to starve. I think what my biggest takeaway, to answer your question, is I believe that I was starving myself nutrients wise on the standard American diet. There was no nutrition in that way of eating. And I think if you were to start adding whole foods and animal protein and fat to your diet, you're going to realize that you were starving too. And, just because you're gaining weight and you have a lot of, fat on your body, that doesn't mean you're still not starving. Your body's crying out for something. And I think we need to listen to that. And, I don't know. I just wish that more people would start now, because it's just so easy once you get started.